guys so much for coming out. It is so cold outside too, so I don't know how far some of you traveled tonight, but thank you very much. I know some people were out here since, what, 9 a.m. is what I heard?
Yep.
Can anybody beat that?
No, I'm not.
Oh, I don't want to hear that. Thank you, though. That is great, and I love your dedication. Thank you so much. We are joined tonight by a lot of other people, because this is being live webcast. So people all around the world are kind of watching this now, so keep that in mind. The cameras are on me, so don't worry about that. What we're going to do is I'm going to read a little bit from Last Sacrifice. I have a kind of spoiler each free section, so no worries if you're not there yet. Then we'll do some Q&A, so if you have some burning questions, think on those. We'll actually be taking some from people watching on the web, and then we'll, of course, take ones from you guys here. And then we'll sign some books. Does that sound like a plan?
Awesome.
Yeah. You guys are my first signing for Last Sacrifice, which means you are also my first reading for Last Sacrifice. 10 days from now, when I finish my tour, I will have this passage memorized, practically, by the time I won't even have to look at the book. This is my first reading aloud, so I might stumble or self-censor if, like, I decide, whoa, spoiler, quick, don't say that. So hopefully it'll go well. To give you a little bit of context, in this section in Last Sacrifice, our intrepid heroine, Rose, is in West Virginia, of all places, and she is with Dimitri and Sydney, and they have come to find some vampires who, they're Moroi, but they sort of live apart from other Moroi. They reject the Moroi world. They're these kind of rustic, I don't know how to explain it. They don't want to follow like society's rules. They have like battles to the deaths to settle fights and things like that. And so Rose and friends are out here trying to accomplish something, which you'll find out once you get farther into the book. And what's going on here is Rose is being shown around by a young vampire who kind of likes her. And so he is showing her his cave because he's very proud of his cave and he wants to show it to her to kind of impress her. The mountain extended quite a ways, and we moved farther and farther from the Keepers' main settlement. That Keepers is what these vampires are called, and they call Rose's people the Tainted because they feel they've strayed. The forest grew thicker, the light growing scarce as the sun finally began sinking into the horizon. I'm kind of on the outskirts, Joshua said apologetically. We keep growing and growing, and there's not much room in the town center. I thought town was an optimistic term for him to say, but I didn't mention it. Yeah, I was definitely becoming a snob. But the caves keep going, he explained, so there's still space. Are they natural, I asked. Some are abandoned mining caves. It's pretty out here, I told him. I liked all the deciduous trees. I might be homesick for Montana, but the wide leaves here were a neat contrast to the pine needles I'd grown up with. And hey, I said, at least you get lots of privacy, right? True, he smiled. I figured you'd think it was, I don't know, too rustic or savage. You probably think we all are. His observation startled me. Most of the Keepers have been so fiercely defensive of their way of life that I hadn't thought anyone would even think an outsider would question it, or that any Keeper would care if we did. It's just different, I said diplomatically. A lot different from what I'm used to. I felt a flash of homesickness for all the people and places I was now cut off from. Lissa, Adrian, our other friends, Port, St. Vladimir's. I shook the feeling off quickly. I had no time to mope right now. I've been to human towns, continued Joshua, and other places the Tainted live. I can see why you'd like them. He turned a bit sheepish. I wouldn't mind electricity. Why don't you guys use it, I asked. We would if we could. We're just too far out, and no one really knows we're here anyway. The Lily people say it's better for hiding us. Can you guess who the Lily people are? Alchemists. Yeah, this is a tattoo. That's what the Keepers call them. It hadn't occurred to me that they simply endured these conditions because they were forced to in order to conceal themselves. I wondered how many of their choices came from clinging to the so-called old ways, and how much was influenced by the alchemists. Here we are, said Joshua, pulling me from my musings. He gestured to a dark hole at ground level. The opening was big enough for an adult to enter. Nice, I said. I noticed earlier that some of the caves were set higher into the mountains, and had watched the residents either climb the rocks bare-handed or use homemade ladders. An easy access door seemed luxurious. Joshua looked surprised at my praise. Really? Really, I said. We'd ended up losing too much daylight. He paused to light a torch, and then I followed him inside. We had to duck a little at first, but as we went deeper into the cave, the ceiling slowly expanded and opened up into a wide, rounded space. The floor was hard-packed dirt, the stone walls were rough and jagged. This was a natural cave, but I could pick out the efforts made to civilize it. The floor had been cleaned and leveled, and I saw some stones and rocks in a corner that looked like they'd been gathered up to clear a space. A couple pieces of furniture had already been moved in, a narrow wooden chair and a mattress that looked like it could barely hold one person. Probably think it's small, said Joshua. It was true, but it was actually bigger than my dorm room at St. Vladimir's. Well, yeah, I said, but I mean, how old are you? 18. Same as me, I said. Having your own, cave at 18 is pretty cool. It would have been cooler still with electricity, internet, and plumbing, but there was no need to bring that up. His blue eyes practically shone at my praise. He suddenly took a step forward. You can stay if you want, he said. The other tainted would never find you here. We could get married, and then when we had kids, we could build a loft like my parents, and then we could... Whoa, I said. The word married had me moving toward the entrance in shock and panic as I would by Strigoi attack. Except usually with Strigoi, I had fair warning. Whoa, slow down, I said. No, I definitely hadn't seen a proposal coming. We just met. Thankfully, he didn't come closer. I know, but sometimes that's how it is. What? I asked. Marriages between people who hardly know each other? Sure, he said. Happens all the time. And seriously, just in this short of time, I already know I like you. You're amazing. You're beautiful. And obviously a good fighter. And the way you carry yourself. He shook his head, awe on his face. I've never seen anything like it. I wished he wasn't so cute and nice. Having creepy guys profess their adoration was a lot easier to deal with than what you liked. Joshua, I really like you, but I added hastily, seeing I saw hope-filled features. I'm too young to get married. He frowned. Didn't you say you were 18? Age was probably not a good argument around here. I had seen how young people had kids back in Dimitri's hometown. In a place like this, they probably had child marriages. I tried another angle. I don't even know if I want to get married. This didn't faze him. He nodded in understanding. That's smart. We could live together first. See what His serious expression turned back into a smile. But I'm pretty easygoing. I'd let you win every argument. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Well, then I'm going to have to let you win this one and tell you, I'm going to have to win this one and tell you I'm just not ready for any of it. Besides, I'm already involved with someone. Dimitri, he asked. No, another guy. He's back at the, tainted court. I can't believe I'd even said that word. Joshua frowned. Why isn't he here protecting me then? Because that's not how he is, I said. And I can take care of myself. And look, even if he wasn't in the picture, I'm leaving soon anyway. It would never work out between you and me. I understand. Joshua looked disappointed, but seemed okay with the rejection. Maybe when you've got everything sorted out, you'll come back. I started to tell him not to wait for me, and that he should just marry someone else. But then I realized that was a pointless comment. In Joshua's fantasies, he could probably marry someone else now, and then add me onto his harem later. Like Sarah and Paulette. There's some crazy stuff that goes on with these people. So I just simply said, maybe. Groping for a change in subject, I searched for anything to distract us. My eyes fell on a chair with a leafy carved pattern in it. That's neat, I said. Thanks. He walked over to it. He ran his hand lovingly over the ornately carved wood. I did it myself. Really? I said. That's amazing. If you like it, he said. His hand moved, and I feared there was a kiss or embrace coming. Instead, he reached into his shirt pocket and produced a finely carved wooden bracelet. It was a simple, sinuous design, the true marvel being how narrow and delicate it was to be all one piece. Here, he handed it to me. This is for me? If you want it, he said. I made it while you were out today, so you'll remember me after you leave. I hesitated, wondering if accepting this would be encouraging him. No, I decided. I'd made my views on teenage marriage clear, and anyway, if he looked so nervous, I couldn't stand the thought of hurting his feelings. I slipped the bracelet on my wrist. Of course I'll remember you. Thank you. From the happy look on his face, taking the bracelet made up for my earlier refusal. He showed me a few more details around the cave, and then followed my suggestion to join the others at the fire. We could hear the music echoing through the trees long before we made it back. And while it was hardly my style, there was something warm and friendly about this community's way of life. I'd never been to summer camp, but I imagine this is what it'd be like. Sydney and Dimitri sat near the group's edge. They were quiet and watchful, but everyone else sang, clapped, and talked. Again, I was stunned at how easily Dampier's humans and Roy could be involved with one another. I turned back toward my friends. Sydney noticed me and looked relieved. Dimitri's expression was unreadable. Like always, the others' eyes followed my movement, and to my surprise, I saw open jealousy on some of the guys' faces. I hope they didn't think Joshua and I had been off getting naked in the cave. That was hardly the reputation I wanted to leave behind. I have to talk to Sydney, I told him over the noise. I decided it'd be best to keep my distance before any rumors started, and truthfully, Sydney looked like she wanted me by her side. Joshua nodded, and I turned away. I'd taken 2 steps when a fist suddenly came right toward my face. I had no defenses up, and just barely had the presence of mind to turn my head and catch the blow on my cheek, rather than end up with a broken nose. After the initial surprise, all my training kicked in. I quickly sidestepped out of the line of attack and put my body into a fighter's stance. The music and singing stopped, and I turned to face my attacker, Angeline. Angeline is Joshua's sister. She stood in a way similar to my own, fists clenched and eyes completely honed in on me. Okay, she said, it's time to find out how tough you really are. What it was time for was someone, say like a parent, to come and drag her off and punish her for punching guests. No one moved or tried to stop her. No, that wasn't true. One person stood up. Dimitri had sprung to action the instant he saw me in danger. I expected him to come pull Angeline away, but a group of keepers hastily moved to a side, saying something to him that I couldn't hear. They didn't try to physically restrain him, but whatever they said, it kept him where he stood. I would have demanded to know what they told him, but Angeline was coming at me again. Looked like I was on my own. Angeline was short, even for a Dampier, but her whole body was packed with strength. She was pretty fast, too, though not fast enough to get that second hit in on me. I neatly dodged it and kept my distance, not wanting to go on the offensive with this girl. She could probably do a fair amount of damage in a fight, but there was a sloppy, no, more like rough edge to it. She was a scrapper, someone who'd done a lot of brawling, but no formal training. Are you insane? I exclaimed. Stop this. I don't want to hurt you. Sure, she said. That's what you want everyone to think, right? If you don't actually have to fight, then they'll all go on believing those marks are real. They are real. The insinuation that I'd faked my tattoos sparked my temper, but I refused to get drawn into this ridiculous scuffle. Prove it, she said, coming at me again. Prove you're who they say you are. It was like a dance, keeping away from her. I could have done it all night, and a few dismayed cries from the crowd demanded we get on with it. I don't have to prove anything, I told her. It's a lie then, she said. Her breathing was heavy. She was working a lot harder than me. Everything you tainted do is a lie. Not true, I said. Why was Dimitri letting this go on, I wondered. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of him, and so help me, he was smiling. Meanwhile, Angeline was still continuing her tirade as she tried to hit me. You all lie. You're all weak, especially your royals. They're the worst of all. You don't know them at all, I said. You don't know anything about them. She might be able to carry on a conversation, but I could see her growing increasingly frustrated. If not for the fact that I was pretty sure she'd hit me in the back, I would have taken the noble approach and simply walked away. I know enough, she said. I know they're selfish and spoiled and don't do anything for themselves. They don't care about anyone else. They're all the same. I actually agreed with Angeline about some royals, but didn't like the generalization. Don't talk about things you don't understand, I snapped. They're not all like that. They are, she said, pleased to see me angry. I wish they were all dead. It was hardly enough to push me into offense mode, but the comment did cloud my thoughts enough that I let her get through my guard just a little. I never would have let that happen with Mr. Goy, but I'd underestimated this wild girl. Her legs snaked out just enough to hit my knee, and it was like tossing a spark into gasoline. Everything exploded. With that hit, I stumbled slightly, and she pushed her advantage. My battle instincts took over, and I had no choice but to strike back before she could hit me. People began cheering now that the fight was really going. I was on offense, trying to subdue it, meaning the physical contact had jumped up exponentially. I was still better than her, no doubt, but in trying to get to her, I pushed myself in her range. She landed a few blows on me, nothing seriously, before I was able to tackle her to the ground. I expected that to be the end, but she pushed back against me before I could fully restrain her. We rolled over, and she tried to take the dominant position. I couldn't allow that, and managed a punch on the side of her face that was a lot harder than the earlier one. I thought that would be the end of the fight. My hit had knocked her off me, and I started to stand, but then that, I'm not going to say that word, but then that little witch grabbed my hair. There could be children watching. I'm just looking out for you. She grabbed my hair and jerked me back down. I twisted out of her hold, though I'm pretty sure she took some hair away with her, and this time finally managed to pin her, throwing all my weight and strength into it as I pressed down. I knew it had to be painful, but didn't really care. She'd started it. Besides, this skirmish had gone beyond defense. Pulling someone's hair was just plain dirty. Angeline made a few more attempts to break away, but when it became clear she couldn't, those around us began whistling and cheering. A few moments later, that dark and furious look vanished from Angeline's face, replaced by resignation. I eyed her warily, not about to let down my guard. Fine, she said. I guess it's okay. Go ahead. Huh? What's okay? I demanded. It's okay if you marry my brother. Yes, that's how that chapter ends. She was fighting Rose to prove her worth because she assumed when they returned that Rose and Josh were going to get married. And chapter 13, I'll just read you the first two lines because I love them.